streaming and we're going to begin the show. This is our pre-time here, and I think I got everything going right. I'm not really quite sure. I don't know if I'm hearing myself or not, but you know what? It's never good when I'm talking to myself anyway. So listen, Andrew, the sports information director at FDU, is taking care of FDU right now and making sure that they have a great kickoff to their season, and he's doing an outstanding job. And Rocky's out and about, and so you have Big Rock here sitting in the seats. Although, to tell you the truth, I'm not really quite sure exactly what it is that I'm doing here, but bear with me. So, we're going to begin our show. It's 7:59. We're going to begin our show here with our first commercial, and then we're going to begin the Rome Show. Here we go with commercial number 1. Let's see. Shut that off and commercial. Here we go.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money, and we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
Okay. We have completed our commercials and we're going to begin the show. Okay, welcome to the Rome Show. And I am your host, Rocky Romanella. And we're going to begin the show today with a little bit of a rant, similar to what my son Andrew does, although could never do it the same way he does. And obviously now we're getting ready for the Final Four. Houston, a 2 seed, plays Baylor, a 1 seed. So I guess they got that one right. And UCLA, an 11 seed, plays Gonzaga 1. So we have 2 1s, a 2, and an 11. And you know, from a historical perspective, if you remember a few weeks ago when I was putting together my brackets, UCLA was playing at 11 against Michigan State. Now, obviously, I was done the first night since I picked Michigan State to win the whole thing. For whatever reason, I continue on the Tom Izzo bandwagon, although this may be my last year of continuing on the Tom Izzo bandwagon. But it was emotional for me because of my great respect and admiration for Coach Wooden from UCLA and my opportunity to meet him and speak with him. And so you had UCLA playing against, where the legendary coach for so many years. And then, of course, he was playing Tom Izzo, Michigan State. So I went with the newer version, Michigan State. But I am glad to see UCLA make a run in honor of Coach Wooden. And Coach Wooden built a pyramid of success. And in that pyramid of success, for those of you who know Coach's pyramid of success and have kind of done some research and homework on Coach Wooden, the pyramid of success are these building blocks. And at the pinnacle is what he calls competitive greatness. And he defines it as, and I think it really apropos for UCLA as they made this run, and for all great competitors, whether in business and in life or in sports, competitive greatness is simply defined by Coach Wooden as being your best when your best is needed. And how appropriate that UCLA is playing Gonzaga, who is the number 1 seed overall going in and undefeated. This is truly being your best when your best is needed. So the Final Four is set: Houston versus Baylor Saturday at 5:15, and UCLA playing Gonzaga at 8:34. Can't tell you I wouldn't be. I mean, I'm hoping Gonzaga can do it, but now that they're playing UCLA, boy, it's going to be another emotional day of who to root for. So, congratulations to the Final Four. Congratulations to many of you who have your bracket alive. I'm certainly not one of them. I mean, my Final Four, just to go back and what was I thinking here, right? Nova, I had Nova playing Syracuse, although Syracuse made a deep run. So that was, I had Syracuse, of course, I had Syracuse beating Houston, which was probably fool's goal on my part, but they got that far. So that was a good pick by me. Of course, Nova didn't make it very far, so I made it far, but not nearly where I thought they'd be in the Final Four. Gonzaga made it all the way, and of course, once you pick Michigan State in the beginning, that's what happens when you work backwards, right? I kind of, the mistake I made in retrospect is, and we do this a lot in business, is you work from the output, from what you want your final result to be, and you work backwards. And certainly a lot of plans are built that way, but the best plans are always built from the bottom up. And so for me, my lesson here for this year's brackets is go back to the time-tested, true ways to do things, which is start from the bottom up. So bottom up would have had me going from the games on over. So the sad part of that whole Michigan State story is I go back to a conversation I had with my son Rocky 2 weeks ago, which is I think it's absurd that 11s are in playing games. I think one of the major lessons here today that the NCAA has to really kind of come to grips with is you have these automatic bids. You've gave these conferences these automatic bids. That was your decision. But you don't like some of the automatic bids because you may not think those are conferences that are strong or could do well in a tournament. But you gave them automatic bids. And so this year was a little different the day it started. But in general, on Tuesday, Wednesday night, they start these playing games, which is truly unfair to the athletes, right? Because they could be in a playing game that really no one's paying attention to. They made the tournament because they won their conference. They're in a playing game that maybe is on a Wednesday night that no one's watching. They're out of the tournament before they even start. No one even knew they were there. That's truly unfair. You know what? Let them bask in the glory of the accomplishment of being their conference winner. You gave them the automatic bid, and quit these playing games the way you have them right now. Just expand it. Figure out the math. And I'm not a good math guy, but it's got to be a better way to figure out this math than this playing game that eliminates some teams and the players don't even get a chance to feel like they've been to the NCAA tournament. So that's my rant on the NCAA, but a good tournament to date, some good upsets, some major teams that weren't even in the tournament this year, like Duke, that have always been perennials in the tournament. So ultimately, it got to two ones, Baylor and Gonzaga, a 2 seed in Houston, and a really great story in UCLA as an 11 seed. Also today in college basketball, Roy Williams steps away after 33 seasons. Boy, Roy Williams had a great career. 903 victories. And you look at some of the coaches that he's sitting there with. Coach K at 1132. That's amazing. Jim Boeheim, 946. Bobby Knight, Bob Huggins, Dean Smith. Raleigh Massimino, when I was checking this, was 816, which was pretty impressive for Raleigh. And so you're in great company. Coach Williams, 70 years old and going to be 71 August 1st, I believe, is his birthday. So, and coached in 2 schools. So he really did it in, Kansas. He had 418 victories, and of course NC 485. So, but Coach K, boy, when you look at that, 1,132 wins, 44 seasons. So, on another note, when speaking of a Coach K, this year, St. Elizabeth's College, St. Elizabeth University now in New Jersey, hired their new women's softball coach, and her name is Coach K. So we have, because you always wondered when I looked at this, 1132, 44 years Coach K for Duke has been coaching. And so now our first game last Saturday, I believe, for St. Elizabeth University's women's softball team, their Coach K had her first doubleheader. So we'll have to get her on the show, and she can talk about what her first coaching debut, what it felt like to coach the first game. It's not about wins or losses in your first season. It's really about, establishing yourself, gaining your footing. Just no different than when you start, your first supervisor's job or your first new job or take on a new additional responsibility. it's not about the W's or L's at that point. It's really about, getting your footing, gaining your confidence, and building your repertoire, building your kind of Coach K, 1132 wins story. And I think that's what's important. One of the things I learned many years ago is at times you have to believe in your people until they're ready to believe in themselves. And I'm sure that athletic department believes in Coach K at St. Elizabeth enough. They believe in her enough that they're carrying her right now in belief. Where Coach K today in Duke has enough wins under his belt that he's got more than enough wins in himself. So as you start to mentor and grow people in your care, just remember at times you have to believe in your people until they're ready to believe in themselves, whether it's athletes or not. Speaking of athletes who believe in themselves, how about Lindor, huh? 10 years, what was it, 841? So great payday for him. Great day for the Metsies. Feels like the Cohen era is starting off pretty good. We had a pretty good off season, so not bad at all. But you got to give him credit, And you know what? The reality is nobody really knows how the negotiations went. But I would tell you, my sense is it probably went a little bit better than everybody thought. Well, I saw Lindor this afternoon, and he handled himself with grace and class, and so he looks like he'll be a Met for 10 years. Great contract. But that's interesting, right? You have these baseball players in the top, I think 4 or 5, sports contracts with, Mike Trout, Tatis Jr., Mookie Betts, now Lindor, and I think Mahomes is the only non-baseball player in the top 5 of these large contracts. So these baseball players are making some pretty good money, and I think they're scheduled to play 162 games. Although, just to go off on a side note here, I don't understand baseball by any stretch at all on how this commissioner figures he's going to get 162 games in when he's already canceled the Mets opener tonight because 4 players tested positive for COVID. Okay, so you got 4 players tested positive for COVID. Put them in some protocol, and can we please start the season? How are you going to get 162 games in if you're starting to cancel games on day one? Look at football. They canceled no games. They played a game with no quarterbacks. I guess they were committed to playing the games, right? Hockey, the Rangers played, 4 or 5 games without the coaching staff because they were in protocol. And of course, there's players in, COVID protocol at some point or another. And you know what? You bring up the taxi squad. So for baseball to think that they're going to play 162 games and they're already having COVID games suspended, or it's illogical. So figure this thing out. One of the things that I side note editorial that may not necessarily represent the view of the station. Man, when you watch some of these decisions that are made, some of these people can't run water downhill. It's just amazing. If they had to, I just don't understand the decision-making process. But that's my rant on that. How you can already, nobody. I don't remember any games we didn't play in spring training because of COVID. The minute the season starts, we've got COVID cases. So that's bizarre to me. So. Of course, the Yankees lost their first game today, so of course everyone will be up in arms. The fan tomorrow will be, people going on and on and on about the Yankees in their first game. Although Sanchez hit a home run, and it was smart for them to start him after a tough season last year. And Cole didn't get the decision. I think he left when it was 2-2. But so baseball started with the exception of the Mets, who would have had DeGrom on the mound tonight, and Francisco Lindor at shortstop batting second. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm glad that baseball is on. Hockey's been exciting to date. They've done a great job with their protocols and continue to play as many games as they can, having the next man up concept when it comes to their taxi squad. So I think that's been great. Been fun to watch. And I think we may not have Hockey with Rocky this week, but I think I would say that it would be my guess that since it's dark out now, that Andrew, who has been managing the games from a sports information director perspective at FDU, will be dialing in at some point. I think I have the mechanics for that, so I think we should be good with that. But I think that a lot going on in sports. You're at that period right now where you have basketball moving forward. You had a little flurry of trades a few weeks ago. If you got the Knicks being somewhat relevant right now, the Nets are starting to make a difference. And so I think that, you've got basketball going full speed. You just went through March Madness. Hockey's you're starting to the playoff teams are starting to define themselves. There are some races that are getting tight. Only a few points separate some teams. So I think that hockey's really starting to become something to watch and pay attention to. Of course, baseball season starts today, minus the Mets, but the baseball season starts today. And of course, you have all the talk about the draft and some trades that happened last week with San Francisco. The Miami Dolphins were really kind of the real Wall Street kind of traders there, or, trading down, trading out and back, and gaining a few picks in the whole kind of cycle that they went through. So all the major sports are playing, and it's a great opportunity to be a sports fan right now. So that's the rant for today, or the on the roam, as he says, kind of summary of some things that are going on. But I do think it's exciting. Congratulations, Coach Roy Williams, for a great career. God bless you. Enjoy your retirement. And it's these coaches, when you think about the difficulty, and all you coaches out there know, you're out recruiting, you're out building programs, you're building teams. The season, there's not much downtime between seasons. So I'm sure a long, illustrious career for Coach Williams, but well-deserved retirement for you, sir. So enjoy your retirement and your two great careers, Kansas and North Carolina. So that's where we are there. So now to change the subject a little bit here, let's talk quickly. I thought we'd go around the horn a little bit with some of the different sports and some of the things that are going on. Very interesting. I mean, it's funny. I think we're on, mock draft number 5,280, all starting with Trevor Lawrence being the number one pick. And then, of course, now the news here in New York is always that it's going to be the young quarterback from BYU, right? Who's going to be the number 2 pick, and then from there it's any person's guess. So it'll be interesting to see. But let's talk for a minute about this whole Sam Darnold situation. It's interesting to me because when you look at this whole concept, and I go back to the Daniel Jones pick, how everybody thought, we got to fire Gettleman. They're crazy. Daniel Jones is never going to be the right pick. They should have picked Dwight Haskins out of Ohio State. This is ridiculous. And of course, now all those same what do they call those people? People that procrastinators are people that don't make decisions, have loose lug nuts. Well, anyway, all these people that know everything, they're the ones that have all these, they got the insight, and if you think about it, Mel Kiper, the guy over remember the Vegas guy, Chucky, who knows everything. You'd have that whole little sports show where he'd interview all the quarterbacks, and he's going to tell you how many of those quarterbacks are all going to be great. At the end of the day, the reality is nobody really knows. And if you think about it, part of it is the situation the players put in, or the person's put in a work environment as a leader, or in a sports setting. And part of it is that environment. Are you in a winning environment? Are you on a winning team? Are you put in a position to be successful? Part of it is what the person brings to this whole equation, right? If you remember in the beginning, we talked about Coach Wooden. Well, the 2 cornerstones of Coach Wooden's pyramid of success was hard work and enthusiasm. Do they bring hard work? Do they bring enthusiasm? Because hard work without enthusiasm is just that, hard work gets old. So you bring that, and then there's skill, and as you move your way to competitive greatness. So you have the situation the person's placed in, the environment, the situation. Then you have the person themselves. What do you bring in? How do you overcome these obstacles? And then, of course, there's these unintended consequences. There are the things that happen that are out of people's control that now you have to, so it's kind of the idea of you've got a great play call, but you walk to the line of scrimmage and the defense is different than you thought it was. So now you're calling audibles. So it's the audibles that are being called because of situations that happen that could impact that. So if you think about it, so let's dissect that from a Sam Darnold perspective. So he gets drafted. Everybody was high on Sam for a while. They all thought Sam could be the number one pick, but he gets drafted by the Jets. And if you think about it, was he ever placed in a situation to be successful? No team really around him. People coming in and out. You know, different schemes, different offensive coordinators, at least two coaches. So think about that from that perspective. So here you are, you're learning the league. You're trying to get into a new league. You know, I remember when Rocky started playing really, high level hockey on some really elite travel teams. And I asked him, what's the difference? What's the biggest difference when you're playing now at AAA hockey, or you're playing in college, you're playing in tournaments, you're playing with some of the best players? What's the difference? And he said to me, there's no easy lines. The game never stops. It's the speed of the game, and it's the fact that there's no bad players on the ice, right? Every line is a good line, and every time you're out there, you're working as hard as you can because everybody's good. And so the game changes because of that. So if you think about a college player, think about the different, teams that they play, and the level of competition really varies. But when you think about the pros, whether any sport you want to pick, there's really no bad players. I mean, the worst player, is probably the best at AAA or whatever. So if you think about it from that perspective, you've got to learn how to play at that speed, every play, every down, 4 quarters, every game. You have to learn a new team, and you have to learn a new system. And you've changed that system, you've changed the team. Think about that for a second, right? So the never placed in a position of success, right? Then Sam himself had his moments, right? He's had his injuries, I think he's got to look within himself and wonder: did I do everything I can to be the best player I can? I can't answer that. For what I can tell from a distance, he seems like that individual. He seems like that player that cares, and his teammates seem to like him. But from a skill point of view, that would I have to kind of take that step back and say, look, from what I can see on Sundays, that's really not a fair assessment. But you could argue that in the 3 years he's been in that position, he really hasn't grown and developed the way you thought he could or would. And then the third area is those audibles. Well, the audibles are different coaches, different schemes, different things that are happening in the league around you, COVID-19, different protocols. So if you think about it from that perspective, you really have to wonder, did he really have a chance to be successful? Like, what was his odds of being successful? And I think that that's really a question that every general manager has to ask themselves when they're making these decisions. No different than every coach has to ask, what did I do to help build this team? What did I do to put my players in a position to be the best that they can be? And I think that you see that in all sports, right? Are these players placed in a position to be successful? Because it's some of the best players, by the way, never make it. You can just sit back and think, as you've grown and developed, and if you're in the age of where you've played against some really good players, and you're watching now as a coach, you can think of some players that you would have thought were guarantees to make it, the big show, and never did. So some of the best players never make it. There's players that we all know that we've watched and said, I can't believe this player doesn't make it. There's players that, you wonder how they end up with a 13-year, 14-year career, really a pedestrian numbers, but you know what? For whatever reason, they stick on different teams. So there's a lot that goes into it, but I really think when you look at Sam Darnold, there's a cautionary tale here that you really have to look at those three factors. What's the environment that this player's placed in? Did these players get an opportunity to be successful? And was the culture, was the atmosphere, was it a good fit? What did they do everything they can or could to be the best player they could be? And then finally, what were those extenuating circumstances, and how did you manage through them, right? How did you manage through that whole piece of it? So I think that, because the lessons that you learned as you watch, like think about Mahomes, great quarterback. We're all in love with him. Can't wait to watch him play. Can throw the ball as he's falling down, zipping it from the side. Put a bad offensive line in front of me. Didn't nearly look as good as he did with a good offensive line, right? You give Tom Brady a great team around him. He's going to manage that team better than anybody else. Going to manage the game as good or better than anyone else, and probably pull out a few wins or two. Probably at 46, 47. Who knows? He may be doing it from a rocket ship or something. So, think about Peyton Manning's second win, right? I mean, his job was not to lose that game for Denver. So I think it's the team, it's the circumstances, and it's what you bring in preparation, doing the things you can do. But it's the same, and I think in all sports, it's those three things are so important. And I think it's the same in business and in life. When you promote that individual, did you put them in the best? Did he or she get the best opportunity to be successful based on the way you develop them and based on the way you give them the opportunity to be successful? So that's my piece there as I'm watching it from a football side. Maybe we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit baseball, and then we'll go to commercial break now. And I believe Coach Romo will be dialing in at one time or another. So let's go to our first commercial break as I work the dials here and do the best I can not to embarrass myself.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money, and we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
All right, here we are. We're back again, and hopefully we had commercial. I almost was going into the Amazon commercial, but that's for our next segment commercial, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. And just kind of shout out to some of our great listeners. We have Rebecca Rutherford on who is watching, so great shout out to a pirate from Seton Hall. By the way, I was told also today that Seton Hall is also named after Mother Seton. So you have St. Elizabeth Seton and Seton Hall. So look at that. We have that connection there. You realize that those two New Jersey schools were that connected in some way through Mother Seton. We also have Mark Ferraro, Enzo, on. So Enzo has been one of our most loyal listeners, of course, with Ken Dubas, the Iowa Hawkeye, who actually hails from Nebraska. I think lives in Dallas today, as a matter of fact. But Ken has also been a very loyal listener and a great fan of the show, and also a person who really takes civic responsibility and has always been a great person in the community as well. So, and of course, is a sponsor of a Covenant House here in New Jersey. So, shout out to Ken. So, those are some of our loyal listeners. So, thank you all for being on as I attempt to work my way through this show. And as I said, Coach Romo should be dialing in here shortly. So, to give his rant and his thoughts on things. So let's talk a minute. So we talked a little bit about football and the draft coming up, and it'll be interesting to see. Of course, the Giants did a nice job. I will say, though, I was a little bit surprised on Mara's interview, which is unusual for the Maras, right? I guess that's what we're kind of finding out about these owners, right? You have the owners that want to be part of the whole process or part of the game in the fact that, they're very much out there, like a Jerry Jones in football. Cohen seems to be out there tweeting, twittering on all the time now, and talking about his dinner with Francisco Lindor. And then the Maras were always kind of like the Rooneys, that kind of old school, classy, behind the scenes, kind of, owner that you really didn't hear much about. It's interesting, you really do see how there is a big difference, right? There's that Jerry Jones type, and now Cohn kind of type, and then you have the, kind of the quiet type. I was a little surprised when the Maras when Mara came out and was talking about the off season, and he's tired of losing, and well, that's all great, but I mean, you're sort of the master of the obvious. So are we, So you know, and by the way, what took you so long to make a move on Jerry Reese, right? When the guy, it's not a draft. I don't think there's a person he's drafted playing football anywhere in the continental United States, Hawaii, Alaska, or maybe even in Europe. So, you know, where was that thought process then when we had this great dynasty that we never replenished because of a general manager who couldn't pick anybody. So I appreciate your frustration. I just think if you're just stay with what got you there, right? What got you there were you were professional, behind the scenes, quiet, better off. Would have liked no John Mara editorial. Okay, but I'm glad you're losing sleep. I'm glad that that you're tired of losing, and I'm glad that it's time for us to start winning again. Thank you. That makes me feel much better. We finally got a good coach, I think, and Judge. I think Gettleman's done a much better job than he gets credit for. But you know what? Everybody needs a martyr. So hopefully this class of free agents with Galladay was great. We got the cornerback. We got an opposite now with Bradbury. So we'll see what happens there. But just an interesting observation on these different types of owners, and I think that sometimes you have to just be careful. What's your role and responsibility, whether you're the CEO of a company or whether you're the CEO or owner of a team in sports, as we're talking about sports. You wonder where you just go a little bit too far, right? It's all fun and games if somebody gets their eye poked out. And so I think that you just really need to, and I think sometimes how you make the sausage, I don't think any of us really want to know that much about it. Just produce a great tasting sausage that we could throw on the grill or put in the sauce on Sunday. We don't need to understand how you're making the sausage, or how you're doing the behind the scenes thing. So I thought that was interesting. But in general, as we wrap up football, it's interesting how football has become almost a year-round sport with the way the draft is being conducted. Now, as we start baseball, listen, we get past these, early COVID situations. I think at the end of the day, 162 games, we should have learned last year is still way too many games. And if we're going to end up if we're going to end up playing 140 because of COVID, that's probably what the season should have been anyway. But so I think that, that there becomes a fatigue problem both for this fan as well as the player. So, I would have liked to have seen them maybe go ahead and cut the season down to a more meaningful number like 140. I think it makes every game a little bit more exciting. And I think it's an interesting, it gives the players enough time, but it also gives the fans some time. So I think that I would have liked to see a shorter schedule. I think we probably could have started maybe mid-April so that we're not starting in difficult weather around the country at different times. So, but 162 games, I think it'll be exciting. We've got some pretty good movement. I think the Cardinals will be an interesting team this year with Nolan Arenado at third base over there. I think obviously San Diego and the Dodgers will end up with a pretty good rivalry going on the West Coast, cities that are, within driving distance easily of each other. So I think that should be some fun. The Midwest is always interesting. The Cardinals will be better. The Cubs always come to play. Milwaukee will be an interesting team. I think Cincinnati had a chance, but boy, they kind of lost a lot there. Bauer leaving, and so just when you think they might be ready to come around, I'm not really quite sure how that'll work. The NL East will be good again this year between Washington and Atlanta. I think Atlanta's the class of the NL East, but the Mets should be there in good contention. They should be able to make a wild card run. Yeah, so I think those two teams will be good. And hey, look, you never kind of count out Mattingly coaching the Marlins, so we'll see how that goes. So it'll be interesting to see. I think the Houston will be there as they generally will be. I think losing Springer probably hurt them a little bit, but you know what? I think that they're still a pretty good team, got a pretty good pitching staff. Toronto may be the surprise team. We'll be interested to see how that goes this year. But the Yankees should win the NL East, I would think. I think the Marlins always give them a run, but I don't know. I mean, I think the Yankees are probably the team to beat in the NL East. The thing that always worries you about the Yankees are they're built to win 100 games because they want to win 100 games, fill the stadium with fans, and best way to make revenue, right? They're not really built to win short series and playoff games where, if you really think about it, the Dodgers are with their pitching staff. I think San Diego's done something to do that. Of course, Houston was built to do those kinds of things. Tampa Bay was always, when they get in a series, you can see how they do things with their pitching staff. They always was pretty strong there. Of course, still Washington Nationals, Atlanta Braves, Mets. So when you start thinking about the teams that are built for playoffs, and then you have the teams that are built for the, kind of winning many games in a year, the Yankees always remind me of a team that's built to win a lot of games, but not really quite sure whether they're built to win the short series. Although they have the talent, they should be able to. We'll see how that goes. But so baseball is exciting to get it started. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm not. I thought they should have done the designated hitter in the National League and been done with this already. Not quite sure why they couldn't make that decision. What was preventing them from doing that? But I think that would have been a good decision. I guess they're starting the player on second base in the 10th inning. That's how the Blue Jays, I believe, scored today. They started with their runner at second base against the Yankees. I would have liked that. I've got to ask Andrew now. You know what? I should know this because I'm on a radio show that's sports, but I like the 7th inning. I like 2 7-inning games and doubleheaders. I don't think that they approved that, but I do like that, to tell you the truth. But if you think about this for a second, if you do 140 games, you don't have to have many doubleheaders. So maybe that's why I think the shorter season is probably a better way to go. By the way, there's no science in 140. It sounds like an even number. So, I mean, I wouldn't argue if it was 125.6 or 142. I just think 162 is just way too many games. And I think there's fatigue on the players, there's fatigue on the fans, and there's no reason for it, right? So I think that that would probably be better. One of the things they could have learned from last year, and it made it a little bit more of a sprint towards the end, which is a fun thing to do. So I think that that's probably something for them to consider. And like I said, I would have done the DH, done that, and got that over with already. I'd have done if you're going to do doubleheaders, do 2 7-inning ones. But I'm not a big fan of starting a person on second base. I don't know why, but it just doesn't feel. And I think they should speed the game along. We don't need everybody fixing their batting gloves, stepping out of the box. Just throw the ball. I don't get that at all. How about why do these pitchers got to warm up between innings, take forever? I think these commercials, you can go to these commercials where it's split screen, right? We're playing baseball and the commercial's on a split screen. We don't need to have, commercial. Nobody leaves. Do you ever notice that when they get innings over, nobody leaves the dugout, they're all sitting there? No, get out there and play baseball. You're athletes. Let's go. Move it along here. Come on. We don't need a 4-hour game. So that's my baseball. But I am looking forward to baseball. And of course, if Rocky was on next week, he'll wrap you up on hockey with Rocky. It has been exciting, man. I tell you what, the Capitals, as he talked about 2 weeks ago, to his credit, Ovechkin's on fire. Remember, he talked about the leading scorers of all time and how Ovechkin, was just moving up that list. Boy, he's just an amazing player. I mean, you watch him from in front of the net, on both dots. Amazing. And if you think about, they did an analysis of Wayne Gretzky. I'm sure some of you have heard this. They did an analysis of Wayne Gretzky. What they found out is that he wasn't the fastest player, certainly wasn't the strongest player, didn't have the hardest shot. But when they asked Wayne Gretzky why he was the greatest player of all time, he simply answered, because I go to where the puck is going, not to where the puck has been. Now think about that for a second. I go to where the puck is going, not to where the puck has been. And do you ever think about that, how Wayne Gretzky can be wide open in the front of a net and tap in the puck, and people are like, how could you lose Wayne Gretzky? How does Ovechkin get to that spot where he takes the pass and he snipes on the top left or bottom right or wherever? And like, how is he by himself? How come no one's on Ovechkin? It's because he's where the puck's going. Where the puck has been is in the corner with 2 or 3 people fighting for it. So those are the players that anticipate. They go to where. That's how come Panarin's such a great passer. He anticipates where his line mates are going to be, and he puts the puck where the players are supposed to be, where they should be going. So it's amazing, and watching him the last couple of weeks, because the Rangers played him a few times, it's amazing. So he was right on that. Ovechkin is clearly that type of player who is just, in a different zone right now playing hockey. But hockey's been fun, and it's great to watch. And with the shortened season, every game counts and every point counts. So I think that's why I look at that blueprint, and I think that's what baseball should be thinking about doing. So that's my rant on on hockey. And finally, basketball. I got to tell you, the NCAA tournaments I love to watch. I am not. And look, you can write me emails and tell me you're disappointed in me, but I'm not a huge pro basketball. First of all, we know who the teams are that's going to make it. As you heard me say before, if you're that poor family who now there's only 1,000 of you allowed into the stadium, and you spent all this money to bring your kids to go see, Kyrie Irving, or well, I guess LeBron is hurt now, but you've brought them to see that superstar player, and now it's their day off for rest. Think about my pal Enzo here, who spent over 40 years on the Garden State Parkway. Nobody said, hey, Enzo, why don't you just take a couple of days for rest? Don't get in a truck and drive up and down the Parkway today. That's okay, because we need rest. It's your job. You're playing a sport. So that's my problem with basketball. They're getting paid a ton of money. They manipulate the team so they can all play with their pals. I have a hard time with all that. But they are great athletes, and so when it comes to the playoffs and you're down to the finals, then I'll probably watch, because that's about the only time for me pro basketball is exciting. But I do apologize for that feeling to all of my friends out there and all of Andrew's listeners who love basketball as he and my son-in-law Chris and son-in-law Sean love it. But for me, it's just I don't like how it's evolved to where the players have that much authority over how the team is built when they want to play. The team is built to the point where who's going to be in these playoffs. Therefore, you're playing out the season, yet the fans are paying all this money, and they, like I said, you spend all this money to get to a game. And that's that individual who your son or daughter has wanted to see play now isn't playing because of that day off. I just think that's just losing sight of really who the fan. And I think once you become bigger than the game, bigger than the fans, then I think you start to lose the fans. So that's my kind of editorial on that. But as we get closer to the NBA playoffs, we'll discuss it more, and I'll be more of an advocate watcher, that's for sure. So with that, we're going to go to our commercial break as we begin. We're 8:42, 15 minutes left here of the Rome show, and we'll do a couple commercials, pay a few bills, and then we'll wrap up for this evening. Of course, I'm always open to constructive criticism, so if you'd like to send me on the iPad here, send me some notes or send me some questions, feel free, or give me a holler. I have my phone hooked up to the whole thing here, so you can text in on. I got the show phone here too, so you can text in on the show phone as well. So, but let's go to a commercial break and pay some bills, and go ahead and start up.
Welcome to MyBookie. You're ready to create an account and start making money. And we're here to help. And remember, you can get a bonus of up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Now you're ready to bet. Just go to mybookie.ag, visit the sportsbook, click on your bet, and input the amount you want to risk or win in the bet slip. Yes, it's that easy. Just remember, at MyBookie, you play, you win, you get paid.
At Amazon, we're pretty good at getting things done. We're pretty good at solving problems. COVID-19 is the biggest challenge we've had to face. But challenges are what motivate us. Like flying masks to our employees around the world. We're doing everything we can to get you what you need, and doing everything we can to keep our people safe. I'm former Navy pilot Sarah Rhodes, and I'm proud to lead our Amazon Air network.
Okay, let's wrap up our last 15 minutes here of the show, and we ended with an Amazon commercial. Got an email from an individual who asked a question about building teams, and was kind of referencing my rant on ownership and Gettleman and draft choices and Sam Darnold, and I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit the short, quick text I got from him. I said email, I meant text. I'm sorry. But basically, what's your thoughts on team building? And how does a Lindor trade, or how's a Lindor signing, or the signing of some of these players impact that? That's a great question. I mean, team chemistry, whether you're building it, in Little League, whether you're building it in a business, whether you're building it on a sports team, there's a real art, science, and a skill to being a team builder. And I think it starts with everyone really understanding their roles and responsibilities, understanding not everyone's going to bat fourth. I mean, you think about some of those old Yankee teams where everybody wanted to bat fourth. Reggie Jackson gets assigned the bunt and kind of looks at the manager like, "What are you, nuts? I don't bunt. I mean, that's not my job." So I think that's a great question, because when you look at these teams, when a team has good team chemistry, it makes all the difference in the world. There's a belief that, well, if I walk up to the plate and I don't move that runner over, or I don't do what I need to do to help the rest of the team, there's a problem with that, right? Everybody sees what everybody does, and there's no secrets on any team. So I think when everybody understands their roles and responsibility, I think that's so important. I think it's important for the manager or the coach, whether in any sport, men's, women, pick a sport, whether college, pro level. The team chemistry is so important, and it takes a lot of skill, and it takes a leader, a manager, a coach, a parent, to really understand the team dynamics. It's interesting. One of my greatest lessons that I learned in business was from my wife Debbie, who you all know. And the story goes that we went out to dinner one night, and Debbie was asked a question by another couple we were with, who we had just really met, and we're kind of getting to know each other a little bit. And the woman said to Debbie, "Hey, you have 4 kids. Who's your favorite kid?" And so, Debbie says, "No, I don't have any favorites." And so she said, "No, come on, you gotta have one favorite. Is it Jean Marie Nicole? Is it Rocky? Is it Andrew? Who's your favorite?" And she says, "I don't have a favorite." And so I kind of leaned back a little, and I thought, I don't want to really hear how she answers this question, because she's kind of getting pressed now. So the woman says, "Well, how could that be? One of them has to be a favorite." And she said, "They're all my favorite." And the woman says, that doesn't seem right. She goes, "No, they're all my favorite. because each of them gets what they need when they need it. Now think about that for a second. Each of them gets what they need when they need it. Therefore, they all feel like they're favorite. You know, and I thought to myself, before I get into that from a team building perspective for a second, I thought to myself, A, how thoughtful, it's just such a thoughtful, brilliant, caring thing to say, and such a great way to lead. And from that moment forward, that was my lesson. And I managed that way in every opportunity I had. When I had a staff and I had a seasoned CFO, what they needed wasn't me over managing them or micromanaging them. What they needed was for me to step back and let them fly. They knew the job, they could do the job. So I hardly spent any time with them. I may have been phone calls here and there, quick check-ins. People could have looked at it from a distance and said, well, I don't think Rocky likes that person because he doesn't spend much time with them. But what they needed, well, I gave them what they needed when they needed it, which was leave me alone. Now I had a new director of sales. I may have spent a lot of time with them, and I may have gone on calls, I may have helped them close a deal because that's what they needed. So if you think about it from a team's perspective, if each member of your team gets what they need when they need it, they all feel like they're important. They all feel like they're part of something special. They all feel like they're not the problem, they're not part of the problem, they're part of the solution. And I think that is such a great thought process. And if you look at these teams that are world-class teams that win and consistently win or know how to win or have great seasons, it's because everybody on the team is getting what they need when they need it. I'm sure Tom Brady doesn't need to be overmanaged, just needs to understand the system, but there's someone on that team who's brand new to the system that really needs a lot of time, effort, and energy and enthusiasm. So I think that's really the importance. And so to answer that question, I think it really comes down to your desire as a leader to build world-class teams, understand what it means to do that. And I think if you do it right, someone like Lindor slides right into that and becomes a valuable member of the team regardless of how much money he just signed for. I think at their level, they're not really worried about that. What they're worried about is this person, if he's that person that comes to work early and leaves late, they're pretty excited about playing next to him. They don't care how much he makes. But if he's that player that's disruptive, if he's Odell Beckham Jr., I don't care how good you are catching the ball. When you become more aggravation in your work as a teammate, then that's when you kind of cross the line. If you think about starting a business, you're always a little bit behind, right? You're a little bit, you got the working capital you need to help you go because your revenue's not there yet. But then you have a break-even point, right? So you're losing money in the beginning, you have a break-even point, and then you start to make money. Well, the same happens with players or teammates, right? You're new, you're really not on the best you can be. Maybe you're learning, you're gaining your confidence, and then you get to a break-even, and then you really start to fly. Well, on a problem child employee or a problem on a teammate, it's almost like, okay, we gave you the benefit of the doubt. You're a great player. Everyone's excited. They're all buying your jersey. But now your aggravation's at break even. Like, you give me enough aggravation and agita, but you are a good player. That when you cross that line and you're more aggravation in your work, we don't really need you anymore. I really appreciate it. You're the opposite of that example I gave. You're overdrawing, right? At some point, you're bankrupt, right? You've used up all the good that you've done early on in your career. And I think that's what's so important. And I think that what differentiates the great leaders coaches are those people that recognize that, understand that, but then address it. Right, because all of us have been in situations where we would sit there and wonder, well, when are they going to realize this person's not pulling their weight or doing their job or as good as they could be? When are we going to realize that this is about the 10th time you showed up with bases loaded and struck out? Or this is the 5th time that you didn't run the bases and got thrown out at third because, at second, when you hit second, you didn't really run as fast as you could or didn't bust it out of the box on a hit. So I think but we all know that. And every player knows that on a team. So I think that's what's so important. And that team dynamic, great question. That team dynamic is so important because skill alone won't get you there, right? Coach Wooden said, I remember we were having a conversation that day. If you haven't had a chance to, I know it's a shameless plug, I apologize. But if you haven't had a chance to go to the website, TightenTheLugNuts.com or 360managementservices.com, the interview I had with Coach Wooden in 2000. Not so long ago it was, but great interview. And he talks about when he had a conversation with Lou Alcindor, then now obviously we know him as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and he had that conversation with him because he was certainly the best player at his time, the most dominant player, and he said to him, "You may be the engine on this team, but without the four wheels, this car is going nowhere. So you need to understand what your four teammates need from you, as well as what they need to help you." And I thought that was such a incredible conversation and such an incredible way of looking at it. And think of the courage to have that conversation with your best player, right? But he owed it to the rest of the team to have that conversation with the best player. And by the way, that I'm sure that best player appreciated that conversation from Coach Wooden, because you think of that famous last couple pictures of that you saw of Coach Wooden before he passed, well in his 90s, and one of the ones that I always think about that kind of brings tears is the one where one of his last times on the court, and he's struggling with walking. And here he is now, kind of frail and, of course, much smaller at this point in his life from a height perspective. And here's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar walking with him and helping Coach Wooden, across the court. And you think about the caring, the love, and here's a person who probably at that point sat down with him as maybe the best player at that time in college basketball, probably was, think about what he became as a pro, and had that conversation with him saying, "You may be the engine, in this car, but you need those four wheels." And that's what great leaders do. They have those difficult conversations with those players, those individuals on the team. And so I think that's such an important lesson that, sports gives us so much opportunity to learn and lessons, the way life gives us so many difficult lessons that we have to learn from. And the two together really help you become I think an accomplished individual, whether it's on a sports field, in a band, for example. Think about the teammates in a band. Think about, my niece was the drum major at her high school, and to watch her orchestrate that band and lead that band. And I think to myself, to watch the members of the band crisscrossing, focusing on their instrument, but also understanding what role they play, where they were supposed to be, and watching her, kind of lead that band is amazing. It's amazing. It's the synchronicity with which they did it. So for me, there's many examples of. They're not just on a football team, baseball team, hockey, basketball team. They're in life in a band. It's the drum major in a band, or drum major in a band. It's a cheerleading squad, watching them do it. It's a dance team. There's so many great examples of it out there. But it's the ability of the leader and the ability of the coach to make sure everybody knows what role they play, what their responsibilities are. And finally, it's that self-accountability, right? True empowerment's when you discipline yourself. True empowerment's when you're harder on yourself as the player, or the person performing, or the member of the family, or someone in the business setting. When you're disciplining yourself, that's when you're truly empowered. And many years ago, they had that lifesaver commercial, right, where the goalie let the puck in, and he's taking a goal, he's hitting the cage, and the coach comes over and says, "It's okay, it's going to happen," and he gives him a lifesaver. And it was a great commercial. But the thing that I always remembered about that commercial was, in that commercial, that goalie was empowered because he was disciplining himself. He was more upset about the puck going in than actually the coach probably was at that moment. Well, when you walk up to that goalie who just let the puck in, and you say to him, "Hey, we really needed a save there. What's going on? How you doing? What's going on?" And he says, "Hey, it's not my fault, coach. The defensemen aren't playing defense. I can't do it all by myself." Well, that's not an empowered player. That's not an empowered person. That's a person looking for excuses from everybody else. So true empowerment's when you discipline when people discipline themselves. And true motivation, on a team is when, when you ask people, how do you motivate people? And they say, well, you treat them with dignity and respect. True, very true, morally and ethically. But that's not how you motivate. You motivate people by talking to them and inspiring them in ways that they can relate to. So, for example, if I'm talking to an individual who's really good in math, I would talk to them about, statistics maybe. If I'm talking to someone who's really good in sports, I may use sports analogies. But the sports analogy to the person really good at math may not be a good analogy for him or her. Same with sports, I give them analogies or examples that they can understand and relate to. So you motivate people based on what motivates them because they're individuals. So the trick as we wrap up tonight's evening is, the trick in team sports is to allow people to be individuals, to be the best that they can be, to feel good about their contributions, to make them feel good as individuals in the context of a team. So I am going to say goodnight. The rest of my team will be back next week, and thank God for you guys that they will be back next week, because they're certainly much better than I am at this. But it's been my pleasure to be on the Rome Show, and have a great week. Be safe. Enjoy your families, and enjoy sports out there. This is the height of sports season, and next week Coach Romo will be back with the Rome Show with his guest. With his sidekick, Rocky will be back, and I will be on the other side of the glass, the other side of the door, trying to do the best I can in some measure, way, or shape as the producer. Take care, God bless, and enjoy your families. And let's go Mets.